We're going to talk about painting and weathering natural metal finished aircraft today. Something that I have kind of developed a passion for in the last probably 3 or 4 years. And I've just spent a lot of time experimenting and testing and watching YouTube videos and talking to other people to develop something that I think works pretty well for replicating a natural metal finish. Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We can't make models out of metal. So what we're trying to do is replicate it as best we can to make it look as realistic as we can. The other thing that I like to do is weather them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So my lovely assistant, Chris, is going to do the slides for me. My name is Jeremy Moore. I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. These are kind of the priorities in my life right now. I'm a husband, father of 3 daughters, 2 of them teenagers. So we talk about modeling and mental health. It's huge for me. It's the only way I survive is when the estrogen level gets real high in the house, I go down in the basement and I relax and escape. So it's a huge deal. I'm a 737 captain for a major U.S. airline that starts with a U and ends with a D. If we lost your bags on the way here, I'm sorry, not my fault. I'm a member of Lehigh Valley IPMS, Eastern Pennsylvania. Mike Hutchinson is here as well, representing. Appreciate that for coming all the way out here. And then I've been a contributor to a number of magazines over the last probably 10 to 12 years now. Very fortunate to have developed a relationship with some of the editors and have been providing content. So you may have seen some of the models here in these publications. One of the things that contributing to magazines has taught me, and it's actually made me a better modeler, is because of photography. If you take close-up pictures of your models, you will find shit that you didn't see. And it makes you very honest, and it helps you quite a bit in terms of improving, because ultimately that's all I'm trying to do, is just improve and get better. And I think that's what everybody wants to do. It's just we strive to get better and to get better and better results. Whether or not that means coming to a contest and entering contest, that's really up to you. It's just the whole goal should be to get better, I think. And here's the disclaimer. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy who, like I said, I have a lot of passion for the hobby. I have a lot of passion for this particular process. So like I said, I've spent a lot of time just kind of practicing and watching as many people, who are good at it and attempting to replicate it the best I can. It's not the right way. It's not the only way. There's all kinds of ways to get the final result. What we're going to talk about today is just kind of the steps in the system, so to speak, that I use to get the results. And all the opinions that I have are just my opinions. Take it or leave it, whatever you like to do. But they're based on experimenting, observing, and then social input, getting feedback from other modelers. And then the last thing is your mileage may vary, but your mileage always gets better with practice. If you do things over and over and over and strive to get better, then more than likely you will get better. So the first question, when we're doing natural metal finish, you have to ask, what are we trying to achieve? Because there's 2 really distinct finishes when you look at airplanes. There's the war-weary, battle-hardened airplane that's grimy, that's dirty. They look a little oxidized. You look at the 2 airplanes on the left, the F-84 and the P-51. There's all kinds of grime and dirt and exhaust staining. This airplane looks pretty oxidized, for lack of a better way of saying it. It's just, it's a dull finish. And then you go to the warbirds that have a nice bright shiny finish. The Century series jet fighters. You think of F-100s and F-104s. That metallic finish is usually much more reflective because the airplanes were, it's peacetime, so they're probably a little more well maintained than they would be otherwise. So that's kind of the 2 distinct genres I think that we look at. And then once we decide on what we're going to do, if we're going to do a warbird or a more modern airplane, this is kind of repetitive, but it's important. References. Get as many photos as you can of the subject that you're trying to replicate. And, you know, get those materials, get those photos, look at those photos, try to find as many unique features in terms of the aircraft, in terms of the weathering, what it looks like. And then look at things in photos like, was it a cloudy day? Was it a sunny day? Because that plays a huge role in how reflective the surface is and what it looks like. But the point here, it's a bit repetitive, it's just references are huge. It's very, very important. Now, the biggest and the single, largest point that I need to emphasize is surface preparation is the biggest thing when it comes to a natural metal finish. You have to get the surface nice and smooth. And the biggest reason is because of the reflective qualities of metallic paints. They're going to show everything. So if you have any type of surface flaw, any scratches, micro scratches, seam lines that aren't completely filled, you're going to see that as soon as you get the first coat of metallic paint on it. And it'll show up. You could paint it flat black and not see it. And then you paint it a metallic color, you're going to see it. It's just the like I said, the reflective qualities of the paint, and that's how it works. And surface preparation, sometimes it's a real grind, right? you join two fuselage halves together, you've got a seam line, you're working on the seam line, and you put that coat of paint on it, shit, there's the seam line, I can see it. So sometimes it does take some repetitive work to go over those seam lines again and again and again and make sure that they disappear. I'm going to talk about some of the tricks and the tips that I use to kind of eliminate some of that work and not have to do it over and over again. So some tools of the trade for surface preparation. This one I think is probably one of the most significant discoveries that I've made in the last couple of years. I didn't come up with it, somebody else did. But black CA is your best friend when it comes to filling seam lines. Unlike normal CA, it's rubberized. It was designed for the RC car industry to repair tires and to glue tires back onto RC cars. So it sands really, really nice. And then the biggest thing is it doesn't shrink. So it doesn't shrink like your Mr. Surfacer, your Tamiya putty, anything that's solvent-based that over time, as it cures, it shrinks. The black CA does not. You can sand it, you can blend it, you can scribe it, and it's really, really nice. It works really well. So if you don't do anything else, or you don't take anything else away from today, go buy some of this and save yourself. Yes, John?
Is there any one brand that you like better?
They're both these two are the same. This is manufactured by, I can't remember the name of the company. They make it for everybody. So you may be able to go to your local hobby shop. If it's like a Hobbytown USA, it may have the Hobbytown USA label on it, but it's the same stuff. This I buy on Amazon. It's my local hobby shop doesn't carry this very often. So the Star Bond is the stuff I use the most, just because it's easy and shows up, in a day or two. The Mr. Surfacer products are still obviously very useful. I'm sorry. Yeah.
One thing I've found with CA glue, and I don't know if this black, I use the regular CA glue. The one thing I found with the CA glue is that as it cures, it gets harder over time.
Yes.
And you need to sand it within 24 hours to 36 hours.
Yes.
Well, otherwise it gets harder than the plastic, and you'll take more plastic off than you will
correct
CA glue.
Yeah, traditional CA does that. This does not.
Oh, okay.
I have left this to cure for 3 weeks and come back to it, and it acts exactly the same as it did if you treat it, if you started to manipulate maybe an hour after you put it on. So I haven't found that it has those same properties. I don't know if it has something to do with rubberization. And when I say rubberized, you really can't tell that when you apply it and when you work with it, but that's what it says in the bottle. So yeah. Yes.
Question back.
Oh, sorry, in the back.
You can save yourself a little money. You can use regular CA glue and MIG pigment and mix those two together and what you get is kind of like a balsa wood. It sands like balsa wood. You don't have to spend extra money doing it, and it sands and polishes and scribes really easily, and it doesn't shrink. So if you want to get the name brand stuff, that's great, but you can make it cheaper. You just need to make pigments like the gunmetal.
Yeah, that's good to know. I learned something. That's great. Thank you. Question over here.
Is the medium thick obviously more useful than a thin black?
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not even. I have never seen it in the thin viscosity. I've only seen it in the medium thick. So it's kind of a gel. Yeah.
What's your opinion on sprue goo?
That's a great question. What's your opinion on sprue goo? I don't like it. I've tried it. I think it takes too long, and it's a function of convenience. I think it takes too long to set up and become workable, because I want to be able to continue working. You know, I found that because it basically, if anybody doesn't know what sprue goo is, you take pieces of plastic sprue and you put it in a bottle of like Tamiya Thin, and you let it sit, and it becomes this gooey liquid plastic, so to speak. Some people like to use that for filling gaps and seams. Like I said, just my personal preference, I think it takes too long. You do have organic plastic, so to speak, when it's cured. But as a function of time, yeah.
So your main objection is just the time?
Yeah, and that's because of my life, work balance, hobby balance. You know, I'm trying to keep things moving. So yeah.
It shrinks too.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Because it's a solvent base, technically, it does shrink. Yeah. Yes.
Would you use accelerator on that, or just let it?
You can use accelerator. Yes. Yep. And you can use CA remover if you make a mistake. It works just the same. Yeah. Like I said, Mr. Surfacer still has its uses. It's a great product. The wing to fuselage join is a great example. You got a little bit of a gap, run that through, and then I take a Q-tip dipped in some 90% alcohol and get rid of the excess. So it's still great stuff and very useful. Here's an example of using this on a seam line, and this is on the bottom of this P47 that I've been working on. So there was a bit of a gap and or a step, a little bit of both, that I filled and then sanded and polished. And you can see that it feathers and it blends much like your traditional putties, which you can't really do that with traditional CA because it dries so hard and it's a different type of material. So, like I said, it blends and it feathers very nicely. And you hit that with some spot primer to check your work, and away you go. So sometimes when we're doing some of the filling, the sanding, we've got to scribe or rescribe. The best example, you've got two fuselage halves. You've got a panel line that goes across the top of the fuselage. So you want to try to make that line continuous again if you sanded away some of it. My favorite scribers are from UMM USA, who are downstairs. No affiliation with them, just I love their stuff. They've got 3 different sizes. The cool things about these, they have a hook that you can drag, but they also have a sharp edge all the way across the tool that you can also push. So the multi-directional thing comes in handy sometimes. If you don't have enough room to get a scriber in and start a line, you can go the other way and push with the scriber. So they're pretty useful. And then this is one of my other favorites. This is from MRP. Really sharp. And it stayed sharp for a long, long time. Needle and a pin vise. That's another favorite. I use that quite a bit for restoring rivets. And then the micro razor saw. That's also very useful for panel lines, on a curve that you want to reestablish. You can, if you have an extra blade, you can, use that as a saw, so to speak, and just cut a very, very slight line in the surface. Sanding and polishing. You're going to sand and you're going to polish the shit out of these things because that's what you have to do to get a good surface. So it's really, really important. I've tried all kinds of stuff, different materials, different products, and these are the ones that I come back to the most. The Infinity sponge or sponges. These are great. They come in these sponge sticks. They come in pads. And they come in larger sheets. So there's all different types of applications. This one right here is my favorite. And I have one, I'll pass this around. They call it a quick shine gloss polishing pad. It's almost, to me, you know, have you ever seen the quick shine shoe shine things? You know, where you shine your shoes up real quick. That's, to me, that's the best way I can describe it. It's labeled as a 4,000 grit pad, which you would think not that high of a grade in terms of polishing, but for whatever reason, when you polish plastic, it gets real glossy and real shiny. And the best part about that is if you're working on a seam line or an area that you filled and you polish with that pad, you'll see everything. You'll see every little surface flaw, so it really helps amplify. So you're not even priming yet. You can already see areas that need to be addressed before you even spot prime it. So again, it's another thing that saves time. And then the other product that I use quite a bit, the God Hand sticks and sponges. Weird name, great product. They have a line of stuff that's just really, really nice, very, very high quality stuff. These are small pads that they're maybe 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches by 1 inch. They come in different sizes. They come in sticks. There's a guy downstairs selling them. Rhino Tools, I think he has some. Again, no affiliation. Just it's good stuff. Like I said, that's these are not, you know, these are the things that I like the most, and it's just based on experimenting and using all kinds of different products. And these are the things that I have on my bench that I come back to the most to get the results. So the next question is to prime or not to prime. That's one of those questions. To gloss before decals or not gloss before decals, right? It's controversial sometimes. People always say, no, you have to prime, you have to prime, you have to prime. These two models were not primed. And I'll pass the P47 around and feel free to come up and take a look at the P38 as well. I will be somewhat controversial and say that unless you're gonna paint with an acrylic or you're after a very, very, very highly reflective chrome finish, you don't need to prime. So we'll kind of talk about that. I'm a lacquers guy. So that's after testing and trying and using all kinds of stuff. I have basically just committed to using lacquers for natural metal finish. Using lacquers, you know, like the modern, the Tamiya lacquer paints, the Mr. Color, the MRP, they have a really significant bite to plastic. I think out of all the experimenting that I've done, Tamiya lacquer paints have the most, and they're the most durable and the easiest to work with. So like I said, unless you're doing something that's very, very highly reflective, like that P47, the Warbird, I don't think you need to use a primer underneath it. Yes?
What about L-Clad?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, the other thing is you know, when you're airbrushing and when you're painting, there's always that the danger factor, right? Anything can go wrong on any given day. We try to maintain consistency in what we do, but there are days when I get things fired up, I get the compressor going, I get some paint mixed, and then the world just goes to shit, you know, and you're like, what happened? So I'm kind of the path of least resistance kind of person. If it's one less thing that I have to do, then I'm going to do that. it's one less chance to screw something up, then I'm going to do that. So that's why I tend to not prime. I'm going to say that if you're going to prime and you're going to use lacquer paints, or even if you're not, I know there's some, some people for health reasons can't use lacquers if you don't have a workshop set up to ventilate because it's nasty, it stinks. If you have the opportunity to do it though, I like to prime with Tamiya LP11. Why that color? Because it's a good foundation for any other colors that you're going to put on top of it to get some variation, some changes in tones or panel line or panel colors, that type of thing. But it goes back to the idea of if you're gonna spray a metallic paint, it's also going to show you what's wrong. So here's your opportunity. You spray with LP11, you find a few things, you sand, you buff, you polish it out, you spray those areas, and you're done. And now you're on to the next step. If you are in search of a highly reflective chrome type finish, Tamiya LP1, the gloss black is fantastic. I'll pass this around. This is F84 fuselage that the forward section was primed with Tamiya LP1, and then it was Mr. Color Super Chrome Silver over the top of it. And when you look at this, I didn't do anything with this. I cut these pieces off the sprue, wiped them off, airbrushed them. Because it's lacquer and it's just easy.
Do you take any steps before you, I know you just mentioned wiping off, but do you use anything to make sure the sprues are clean before you put any paint on it?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't wash the plastic. I don't do any of that. If I'm eating fried chicken for dinner and I go down into the workshop and then I'm like, shit, so I may use a little alcohol to wipe those spots, but I'm not doing the whole thing, so yeah. Now, spot priming, on the other hand, do it all the time. And it's another step that saves you some work later on. So we were talking about working on seams and panel lines. I worked on, the spine up here. This panel line kind of needed to be rescribed a little bit. Did some sanding, did some polishing. Hit it with some Mr. Surfacer, the 1500, the finishing. I love their stuff, but I hate their names. Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 black, thinned with Mr. Leveling Thinner. That's all I use, Mr. Leveling Thinner. Like I said, tried all kinds of other stuff. Tried hardware store lacquer thinner. Tried the Tamiya brand lacquer thinner, and that's what I use because I get the most consistent results. So you spot prime. You get a better idea of if you need to do any more work. You polish those areas with the white polishing pad that's going around. And, if you're good, then you're on to the next step. Now, the best paint for the job. This is one of those, I'm going to make some enemies, I'm going to make some friends, right? So we've got three basic classes: lacquers, acrylics, and enamels. Like I said, I'm a lacquer guy. There are more lacquers that have a range of metallic finishes than any of the other types of paint.
The bottle of the AK Extreme Metal says enamel right on it.
Yes, I was going to get to that. So the AK Extreme Metal, you got to be careful because they re-released that line as a lacquer. So depending on, you have to look at the label. And I only discovered that when I was making these slides because I was going through stuff and I had it in the enamel category. And I went and pulled out the paints that I have, the AK Extreme Metal, and it all said lacquer. And then I did a little internet research and lo and behold, they re-released all that stuff. I don't know how long ago, but some of it's enamel, some of it's lacquer. Yeah. Yeah, just to make things even more complicated, right? Yeah. So those are your choices. Enamels, this one, that's like, that's voodoo because you can't find the stuff. And it's the guys that use it love it, don't want to use anything else. And I'm like, yeah, but someday you're not going to be able to find it. So make the change, do it now. So it's great stuff. I used to use it, but you just can't get it anymore. And if you do find it, it's way too expensive. So this is a new line, MCW Finishes. Don't know much about it. It's a U.S. manufactured product that is starting to show up, but they do have some metallic paints. Yes, John.
Let's say they were available. Would you or would you still go with Grill?
No, I'd still use lacquer. Yeah. So someone asked the question about All-Clad, which is in the category of lacquers. Love the paint, love the variety of colors, don't like its durability. And when I say durability, not just handling, but masking, it's very easy to pull that stuff up, even with all kinds of, precautions taken. Yes.
My experience is just the opposite. All-Clad is very resistant, very durable.
See, and that's, yeah, exactly. And that's the back and forth with this discussion is, like I said, your mileage may vary. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'll tell you, the first time that I used All-Clad, I like to paint my markings on with masks that I cut. The first time that I used All-Clad with painted masks, I had a really nice U.S. Stars and Bars national insignia on a wing, and I went to pull the mask up, and it pulled up all the All-Clad. So I was like, no more All-Clad.
Right there with you.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, your mileage may vary.
Let me ask you on that. Did you have a primer underneath it or no primer?
That was primed. Yeah. Yeah. So, who knows? Fried chicken. Yeah. Fried chicken. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as far as the Tamiya lacquer paints and their AS series, those are the aerosol cans, the rattle cans. Before the introduction of the bottled Tamiya lacquer paints, I used Tamiya AS12 bare metal silver, decanted, taken out of the can, thinned with Mr. Leveling that are pretty much exclusively. And then they came with the bottled paints, and I'm like, well, that's a lot easier because now I don't have to make a mess. Mr. Color Super Metallics, probably number 2 in my mind. These aren't ranked by my preference. They just happen to end up that way. But Mr. Color Super Metallics, my second favorite. Again, the durability, the range, and they're very easy to work with. All-Clad we talked about. Like I said, if you have something that you may not end up masking over, or something that is an area that you're not worried about, use it because it's good paint. The AK Extreme Metal stuff, like I said, they transitioned to a lacquer. Good stuff. Good range of metallic colors, very fine pigment, but not as durable as Tamiya or the Mr. Color. And then Mr. Paint, also some great metallics. They have kind of the same colors as the Mr. Color Super Metallics, but slightly, if you have to grade it on a scale of durability, to me LP is 100. Mr. Color Super Metallics is probably a 90. Mr. Paint is an 80 to an 85. So they're all pretty durable. I have never used the Vallejo Metal Color acrylics, but I know a lot of folks who have, and they love them. The difficulty with acrylics is pigment. The size of the pigment is typically larger in an acrylic. So the metallic finish to me looks different than a lacquer-based pigment in a metallic. It's the lacquers are much more fine. So some of these, like I just bought some of this because I'm a sucker for paint brands, like most people probably. New paint, oh yeah, I'll try it. I think they're nice paints, but the pigment is just way too big for metallic surfaces. Just doesn't, when you airbrush it, it goes down nicely, but it just doesn't look realistic to me. And then enamels, yeah. So this is my workflow that I use when I paint with lacquers. And if you want to pass, we'll pass this around. This is a project that I hope to have done before I got here, but obviously it's not. But you'll see some of the pictures are of this model. And if you've eaten fried chicken, don't pick it up, please. So I start with a lacquer primer or base coat. So I spot primed it, and then I painted it with Tamiya LP11. And then I did some additional detail painting. So the anti-glare panels, those have been painted. I use Mr. Color for those. So you can use an acrylic or a lacquer over it. When I say acrylic, I'm referring to Tamiya, which really is not really an acrylic. It's kind of a hybrid acrylic. I'm not talking like the AHO or AK 3rd Gen. It's the Tamiya acrylics or lacquers.
No problem with that paint sticking on the metallic finish.
No, never really had any issues with it. Yeah. Then I'll put my decals on it. Then I'll do an enamel panel line wash. And then I'll post shade it. And then I'll do some oil paint, enamel, or weathering to include splattering. That's kind of the final step. So here it is, painted with LP11, thin with Mr. Leveling Thinner. It's hard when you get this painted, you're like, oh, this is awesome. I don't want to do anything else to it. Because you can sit and look at it and you're like, oh, it's so smooth and shiny and it looks great. But we all know that really doesn't look realistic. So, but it depends on what you want to achieve. If you want to stop there, hey, have at it. Stop there. I like to take it a little further and do the weathering stuff, so I go on to different steps. So here I picked out some panels with some Mr. Color, the Super Metallics. Post-it notes are the bomb for masking because the adhesive is so low tack, you really don't have to worry about doing any damage. And then Tamiya tape. Tamiya tape, I de-tack it, so I'll put pieces on the palm of my hand before I use them, just so they're a little less tacky. It's a superstition thing. I don't really think you have to, but I'm not taking any chances at this point because I don't want to screw it up. And then I've also done some of these smaller panels. I cut some masks with a silhouette craft cutter, which is awesome. They're great tools. Yes.
Your ratio of paint to thinner?
Good question. I didn't put that in here. So I typically do about 60 to 70% thinner and 30 to 40% paint. These are like 60-40, 60 thinner, 40 paint. And the Tamiya LPs, they're just a little bit thicker out of the bottle, so I'll use a little more thinner with those. And I'm airbrushing at like 18 to 20 psi. I haven't touched the regulator on my compressor since I plugged it in, I think. Yes.
How many coats are you using?
So I'll do typically 2 light coats and then a final heavy wet coat. And in between the 2 lighter coats, inevitably you may find some dust, lint. It's kind of hard to eliminate that unless I'm wearing an electrostatic suit, which I don't have. So, although if I could find one, I would get one. So I'll in some cases I'll do a light coat, let it set for like 30 to 45 minutes. Look for any of that stuff. And the beauty with lacquer paints is after like 45 minutes to an hour, you can buff that stuff out. You can get rid of any lint or dust or anything that's on there. And then here I'm doing some of the details, the anti-glare panels, Mr. Color Olive Drab, thin with some, this is Middlestone. It's a dark yellow color for highlights. Again, Post-it notes are your best friend. And then I'll put decals on. This is the best part about using, metallic paints is there's no argument about glossing before decals because it's a smooth, shiny finish. You don't have to do anything. You just put your decals on. And then I'll seal them with Mr. Color GX100. It's their super clear. That's heavily thinned with lacquer thinner. Like probably 80% thinner to 20% clear. And I'm doing that to protect the decal from everything else that's going to happen, all the weathering steps, because I'm going to put panel line washes over those. And I don't want to mess with, potentially ruining the decals. Yes.
Have you had any problems with any reaction of the decals with that dirt coat as far as, you have to really thin it down so it's not as hot?
Well, because I thin it so much. I think I've never really had any issues with it. And the thinner you get it, the smoother. I found the thinner it is with Mr. Leveling Thinner, because it has those leveling properties, the smoother the clear finish is. So you can avoid the pebbly finish, because clear coats are a pain in the ass, right? To get something smooth and to get something nice. So by thinning it with the Mr. Leveling Thinner, I've always found, if I think I have enough thinner, I'm going to add some more, because it just helps smooth things out. Yeah. Yes.
You ever use the Rapid NLT?
Mr. Rapid Thinner.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. I have found, and this was another airplane that I was not a metallic finish, but I used Mr. Rapid Thinner with a gloss paint, and it was beautiful. It took some of the gloss away and it ended up being like a semi-gloss finish. Usually I use Mr. Rapid Thinner if I'm painting small. And what I mean painting small, like doing camouflage, like on a 109 or a 190, you're doing modeling. Mr. Rapid Thinner helps with the drying time. Yeah, it dries quicker. But I've never really used it with metallics. I think it even says, one of those says not for metallic paints. I think that may be the one. I don't know. Yeah. So then I'll do an enamel panel, an enamel-based panel line wash. I like the MIG stuff. There's all kinds of stuff out there. I'm just lazy. Oil paints thin with mineral spirits work equally well. A lot of folks use those. Yes.
What decal setting solution do you use?
I just use the Microsol Microset. Yeah. And then just removing the excess panel line wash. Scott Samo was talking about how he's Mr. Precise with putting it in I am not that guy. It's like the Frank's hot sauce. I put that shit on everything. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah.
So I noticed that you're not wearing a glove in that photo.
Nope. No.
Once I put paint down, I never touch it.
Yeah.
You don't worry about the.
No, I don't.
He wears gloves for the chicken.
Yeah. After I'm done eating fried chicken, I take the gloves off, and then
Fried chicken dinner tonight.
and this step is probably one of the most important steps if you're gonna continue weathering with oil paints, and I'll explain why. So I do post shading with a heavily thinned brown and black mix. One of my favorites is this MRP color, exhaust soot. It looks like coffee, brownish black, but it's a matte clear. So it's not very opaque. It's very, very translucent. And you can build up your layers successively. It's very hard to screw it up unless you're painting real close and you're using real high pressure, because then you run the risk of, a big splatter pattern. Yes.
Are you showing off your airbrush? Is that expensive airbrush?
Yeah, yeah, it is. That's in a lot of custom Micron C, which I don't use anymore because I bought one of those, what's the other, PS 770. Yeah, same brush basically for a lot less. Yes, Austin.
If you can't get a hold of MRP, could you possibly make that with like a flat
Yes.
clear with some whatever the base is?
I'll show you in the next slide. I'll show you. I use Tamiya XF brown and black, which takes care of the matte thing, so you don't have to add any to it. I use that in addition to this. So what I'm doing is when I post shade, you can see I'm doing these lines. I'm doing the exhaust areas. I'm kind of doing areas around the ammunition access bays. the wing roots, because we've got a glossy surface, and I'm going to weather with oil paints. Oil paints on slick surfaces don't work very well. So this step adds a little bit of roughness to the surface and helps with oil paint weathering in the next step, so it doesn't slide around on you. It also helps develop ultimately what we're after with a weathered airplane is, for lack of a better word, patina, right? So you got this layer upon layer upon layer of dirt and soot and oil and all kinds of stuff that dirty up the airplane. This is just one more thing that contributes to that look. So yeah, again, this is one of my favorite colors right here. And then I'll also use a mix of, like I said, to me, XF64 and XF1, both flat colors. This is like 80% thinner and 20% paint, real thin. And it's a little bit darker than this color. So if you want to add some depth, here I'm doing exhausts. One of the other thing about painting exhausts that I've learned, everybody wants to paint exhausts this way, right? I found that by painting this way in short strokes, you have a lot more control over what the exhaust looks like. So like the P51 that I showed earlier, the P51s typically have an exhaust streak that comes off the side. Everybody wants to paint it in a straight line, and it's hard to do that and make it look realistic. So rather than going in a straight line, try short, quick bursts back and forth, getting further and further away from the surface of the model as you get further and further away from the source of the exhaust.
Arthur said this, but did you mention a PSI you do that at?
It's the same. Yeah, 18 to 20. So now I'm starting the oil paint weathering. Starship Filth. Awesome color. It's blackish brown. It's a science fiction thing, I guess. But it's a nice color. I start by putting these dots in areas where I'm trying to replicate, footprints, greasy handprints, that type of stuff where, guys are working on the airplane and they got grubby hands and they're taking panels off. So I'll put these dots in those areas, and then I'll go back with a brush that's dampened with basically mineral spirits or this wash thinner. And when I say dampened, I'll dip it in the bottle and then I'll wipe it off on a piece of paper towel. So it's damp, it's not wet, it's not dripping wet. And basically I use an up and down motion, a vertical. So I'm picking up paint and I'm moving it to somewhere else. And then I'm moving it to somewhere else. And then I'm moving it to somewhere else. Each time a little bit of paint comes off the brush. And here you can get a better idea of this side that's not been done and this side that has been done. So again, it's up and down, just quick, short strokes. You're picking up paint and you're moving it to somewhere else. And then you're picking up some paint, or you have paint on your brush that you picked up over one of those spots and you're moving it somewhere else. And you just kind of repeat that process. Oops, sorry. You can do this more than once. You can do it 3 times. You can use different colors to get some variation. And then this is not a natural metal finish airplane, but I was trying to get some photographs of the speckling, and it's really hard to see. So I just threw this. This is a 109 that I built. And you can kind of see the speckling after the wheel wells here. The small tiny dots, that's replicated with a black and brown enamel mix or a panel line mix on a brush. And you take a toothpick and just flick the brush over the toothpick, and the splattering basically is in the direction that you're moving the brush, the motion of the brush. Again, contributing to kind of the patina, the overall, the staining. And then here's some shots. It's kind of, like I said, it's hard to see. There's some you can see here on the cowling of this P-38. This is kind of the culmination of all these processes. We got some chipping on the leading edges, oil streaks and stains. Those were done with oil paints. We've got the splattering, some more streaks coming off the spinner, the join line here. So all of those things kind of add up to the overall look and making it look used and dirty. You know, you can see the difference in the panel colors, the tones. This is a different color than this. This is a different color than this. So that all creates some variety. It makes it more interesting to look at.
Real quick, Jeremy. Different fuels or different fuel mixes throughout the like World War II, especially left different like exhaust colors.
Yes.
Are you getting to that, or is that something that you?
No, you know, it's something I didn't include, and you can see it in this photo. I can't remember the stuff. It was like tetraethyl, whatever. That
So
was.
is that a whole nother seminar?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, there's a lighter color that's in the center of this exhaust stain that you'll see typically on Allied aircraft because they added something to the fuel that made the engines run more lean. Yeah, I don't remember. Something like that. I can't remember my, yeah. So yeah, that's something that was added here. It's a little bit lighter. Yes.
The chipping on that, was that taking paint off, or was that with the pencil, or how was
So you can go back. Yeah, that's a good question. This is some masking fluid that was added before I painted the invasion stripes. That rubber, it's basically rubber cement type of stuff. And then the rest of it, like all the chipping on the cowling, that was all done with a Prismacolor silver colored pencil. And that's my favorite. You know, it's my opinion, my style, my philosophy. I always go with the concept of less is more. So I try to be subtle and not, you know, scratch the shit out of everything, because it's just, to me, that's my opinion. So it's something that, you know, it takes some time and some practice. But the colored pencils are great because if you don't like it, you can erase it with mineral spirits. Comes right off. That's the other nice thing about weathering with enamels and oils over a lacquer. You don't like it, you wipe it off and you start over. So it makes it very easy. So this is a couple quick slides. On this P-38, I tried something new, and this was painful because I took a really, really nice shiny airplane and then I did this modeling thing. And as soon as I did it, I'm like, what have I done? But the goal is to create some variation to the finish. So you do this. I used this is an engine gray color, I think, through some pre-cut masks, and then you go over this with light coats of your metallic finish. So in this case, to me, LP11. And this is kind of what you end up with. You can see some variations in the reflectivity of the surface. Makes it look different, more realistic, less realistic. I don't know. I thought it looked kind of cool when it was all done. So it was, like I said, just an experiment, which is something that you know, I like to try. But I think in the end, it came out better than I expected, and better than I like I said, when I started it, I'm like, probably shouldn't have done this. And when I was done, I was happy I did it.
Would you do it again?
I would, yeah. I did not do it on the P-47 because I was pressed for time, which didn't matter because I didn't finish it anyway. But so yeah, and then the other hard part about this is then I covered most of this up with invasion stripes. So yeah. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time and attention.